I'm about to tell you a story, one you've probably never seen or heard before. This isn't just any city, it's known as the City of Death, because those who went there never returned. And the same thing happened to us. We'd only heard the stories, but when we saw it with our own eyes, what we experienced still haunts us to this day. So let's dive into our terrifying journey. But before we begin, if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, make sure you do that now and help this video reach 100 likes. Are you ready? Let's begin. The story starts now. I had always been drawn to places with history deep, echoing history that clings to the walls and breathes through every brick. So when I received a letter inviting me to explore the haunted legends of New Orleans, I accepted without hesitation. It was mid-October when I arrived, and the air in the French Quarter was thick, not with humidity, but with memory. Narrow cobblestone streets snaked between centuries-old buildings, painted in fading pastels, their balconies adorned with creeping vines and wrought iron railings. Jazz echoed from distant alleyways, mixing strangely with a silence that lurked between footsteps. My destination was Royal Street, home to the infamous La Laurie Mansion, a towering French Creole townhouse that once belonged to Madame Delphine La Laurie, a woman whose name was etched into the city's darkest nightmares. It was said that screams once spilled from that house into the night, and that her victims still wandered the halls, searching for release. As I stood in front of the mansion's massive black doors, something in me hesitated. The structure loomed with an unnatural stillness, as if it were watching me back. The gas lamps flickered even though the air was still. Locals walking by crossed the street before passing it. One woman whispered, "Don't look at the windows." I didn't understand why then. The moment I stepped inside, the door shut behind me, with a thud not by wind or by hand, but by decision. The air was cold, far colder than outside. The smell of old wood, dust, and something metallic greeted me. I had arranged to stay the night alone, to document whatever I experienced. At first, the house felt like any other abandoned mansion, creaky floors, dark corridors, old furniture draped in white sheets. But as the evening deepened, so did the sense of dread. Time seemed to slow, and the walls, they began to whisper, low murmurs, scratches, footsteps that weren't mine. And from the top of the grand staircase, a shadow stood motionless, watching me. Then it vanished. I woke the next morning not in the bed I had carefully prepared in the parlor, but sprawled across the wooden floor of the second-floor hallway. My head throbbed, my palms were scraped, and dust clung to my clothes like I had been dragged. Yet there were no signs of disturbance. The sheets downstairs were still perfectly folded. It didn't make sense. I checked my camera. The battery was dead, though I had charged it before entering the mansion. My phone, too, had drained completely, but it was the hallway mirror that drew my attention, an enormous antique glass, framed in gold leaf with hairline cracks like a spider's web spreading through the center. At first it was just me in the reflection, disheveled, shaken, but alone. Then slowly a second figure appeared behind me, tall, in shadow, its face concealed by darkness. I spun around, nothing. But when I turned back to the mirror, the figure remained. This room wasn't on the floor plan. No documentation I'd found online had ever mentioned a mirror room. I reached for the door across from the mirror. It was locked. No knob, just a flat wooden surface, seamless with the wall. The whispers returned. Not loud, not angry, just persistent. Software, repetitive. She never let them go. She never let them go. I stepped closer to the mirror. My own breath fogged the surface. Behind the fog, the figure began to move. Not walk, glide. Slowly drifting from left to right behind me, as if searching for something. I stood frozen, too afraid to blink. Then from the crack beneath the locked door, something scraped. A dry, sharp, dragging sound like fingernails across stone. I backed away. The light bulb above me popped, showering the hallway in glass and darkness. And from within the locked room, a child's voice whispered clear as day. "Please don't leave us. I didn't leave the house. I wanted to." Every part of me screamed to abandon the LaLaurie mansion and flee back into the living, breathing streets of New Orleans. But curiosity had its claws deep in me, and fear oddly had transformed into something else, resolve. There was a truth in this house, something ancient and vile, something that wanted to be seen. By late afternoon, the sun had disappeared behind heavy clouds, casting the house into a gray gloom. I returned to the study once said to be Delphine LaLaurie's private parlor. Dust coated the shelves and old portraits hung crookedly, their subjects' eyes following me with unnerving precision. I found it behind a warped panel in the fireplace, a leather-bound book brittle with age, buried beneath old cinders and soot. Not of finances, but of names. Human names. Dozens of them, handwritten in ink, faded to brown. Some were marked with symbols I couldn't understand. Others were crossed out violently. There were dates, most from the early 1800s, and chilling notations beside many. As I turned the pages, the air grew colder. Every name whispered itself aloud in my ears, as though the souls behind them were leaning close, desperate to be remembered. One name had not been crossed out. Suddenly, a low thud echoed through the ceiling above. Then another. Measured, deliberate footsteps. The ledger trembled in my hands. I heard a girl's laugh, hollow, broken from the top of the staircase. I closed the book, gripped my torch, and made my way slowly up the stairs. Each creak beneath my feet, a countdown to something unspeakable. At the top, the air was heavier, like walking through water. The attic door groaned open, and that's when I saw her. Clara, no longer a child, but not entirely human. Her form flickered like a dying flame, her eyes hollow but locked on mine. Behind her, dozens of faces half-formed in the darkness, watching, waiting. I fled from the attic, breath short and heart rattling in my chest, like a cage full of angry birds. But the moment my foot hit the second-floor landing, something changed. The house shifted. The corridors stretched unnaturally long, and doors I'd passed earlier had disappeared entirely. The front door, the only exit, was simply gone. I wasn't in the LaLaurie mansion anymore. The house had become something else, like it was remembering itself in a different time. Flickering candlelight appeared in sconces lining the walls. The wallpaper looked newer, freshly patterned. I heard music, faint piano chords, like from a distant room in an old dream. And beneath the music, the shuffling of feet, the murmuring of voices. I followed the sound, drawn through a twisting hallway that should never have fit inside the building's architecture. At its end, a door, ornate, painted red. Inside was a circular room lit by dozens of candles. Mirrors lined every wall. In the center stood a round table, and at it sat 6 people, men and women, dressed in old-fashioned clothing, eyes closed, hands joined. They didn't see me. They didn't move. On the table was a Ouija board. The planchette shifted, slow and deliberate, spelling words I couldn't understand. A low hum vibrated through the air, resonating in my ribs. Then suddenly all 6 people snapped their eyes open, milky white, blind, and they turned their heads in perfect unison toward me. "You were not summoned," one of them said, but their mouth didn't move. I tried to step back, but my body wouldn't obey. My limbs felt distant, disconnected. The mirrors around the room began to ripple, like water disturbed by a stone. In each reflection, I saw myself, but older, more broken, eyes wide with terror. In one mirror, I saw Clara again. She stood behind me. Her voice echoed from every surface. "You opened the book. You're part of the house now." The candle flames extinguished all at once. Pitch black swallowed the room, and from within the darkness, voices rose, not one or two, but hundreds, all whispering, crying, screaming. When I opened my eyes again, I was alone in the room. The seance table was gone. No mirrors, just cold, crumbling walls, but etched into the floor in front of me were 3 words. My throat was dry, my limbs heavy. I staggered down the hall, searching for something, anything that still felt real. Outside the windows, the streets of the French Quarter were frozen in place. No movement, no sound. Even the wind refused to blow. I was the only living thing left inside a city trapped in memory. Downstairs, I found the mirror again, the one that had first shown Clara, but now it was different. A faint outline of a door had appeared behind the reflection, etched in gold filigree, and on it carved in cursive, "You want out? Then bring her peace." I didn't know how, I didn't know what she wanted, but deep down I understood, and this house had collected every whisper, every scream, every secret Delphine Lalaurie tried to hide. The spirits didn't just haunt the mansion, they were the mansion. And Clara, whatever was left of her, was trapped in its oldest, darkest corner. I followed the sound of her weeping down into the basement. The air grew colder with each step. The stone walls wept with moisture, and shadows crawled along the ceiling like vines. At the far end was a rusted iron door. I touched it and it opened without effort. Inside, chains hung from the walls. Bones lay scattered across the floor, and there, in the center of the room, stood Clara, no longer flickering, no longer ghostly. She was whole, but her eyes were endless pits of sorrow. "You came back," she whispered. "I want to help you." She looked down. In her hands was the ledger. She offered it to me. When I took it, every candle in the basement roared to life. The ground trembled. A scream, not from Clara, but from the house itself, rose through the walls. "You must tell them," Clara said. "Tell the world what happened here." And with that, she vanished. The door behind me burst open. Daylight streamed in. It's been weeks since I escaped the Lalaurie mansion. At least, that's what I tell people. But escape isn't the right word. My dreams are not mine anymore. Each night I hear whispers, chains dragging, a child crying softly in the distance, and always Clara. She never speaks now, she just watches. But something stranger happened last night. I received a package in the mail, no return address, just my name, scrawled in ink so old it looked like dried blood. Inside, a single page, yellowed with age. Written in hurried French, the letter was signed by Delphine Lalaurie herself. A confession, not to the police, not to the press, but to someone she called the Mirror Watcher. She wrote of secrets even darker than the basement, of rituals she performed, of souls she traded, and of a girl, a servant she couldn't break, whose spirit refused to leave Clara. The letter ended with a single line, underlined twice. "If you see her, it's already too late." I dropped the letter. My phone buzzed. A message from a blocked number. "She's behind you." I turned, and there, in the mirror above my fireplace, she stood again, closer than before.